Patrick Powell. Patrick Powell is an energy worker and author. He's authored 3 books. The 3 Passions of the Soul, Still Nothing, and Patrick?
The Great Book of Existence.
Thank you. And thank you for coming today.
Thank you for having me.
We are going to be asking Patrick a few questions about his work and how he got into energy work. And one of the first questions we're going to ask is, what year did your awakening occur?
Oh gosh, it wasn't so much as a point in time, it was more of a progression. It started, I would say, in the early 2000s. And then as you experience more things, you get that aha moment.
Yeah.
So I would say my aha moment was probably about 2009-ish,
Yeah.
where I had my aha moment. And as I said, you build to it. It's not like one day you wake up and the light switches. It's a progression of things that get you to a point in your life.
Wow. Very similar to a lot of other healers. They say that it slowly happens. And how did it, so basically it did unfold slowly, as you said. How does an energy healing session work with you?
Well, everybody works a little differently, but what I do is I work with a lot of times remotely with people, and sometimes I work in person with people. And when I work in person with people, as opposed to remote, it depends on the individual. Sometimes I try both. Everybody responds differently, and some people, they get more from the remote than they do from the in-person, and vice versa. And so typically what I do is I get people to fill out an intake form. So, are you familiar with energy healing? Are you comfortable with it? And one of the disclaimers I have is you can't have, for a number of reasons, anything in your form or anything in your service that says don't use traditional medicine, use me. You have to say we are supplementing whatever care you have, but we don't replace it. We want to work with whatever regime of medication or whatever that person's using.
Yeah.
So once they complete the intake form, we decide, okay, we're going to try a remote or in person. So typically with a remote, I will call, we'll make an appointment, let's say, 6 o'clock in the evening, and we will say, I will call you at 6, find someplace quiet, and whether you want to pray, meditate, lie down, or whatever you feel comfortable with, just be present and free of distraction. So at that point, when I work with that individual, I connect with them and I send them energy. And the energy will move and behave in a way that is really outside of my control or the patient's control. It's more of what does that person need, not what they want or what they think they want. And the energy will do what it needs to do. And then after the session, I will call them and say, well, what did you experience? And I'll explain to them what I experienced. And we will compare notes as far as what did it really mean. Sometimes I'll see a glimpse of something, or they'll see a glimpse of something. So that we'll have 2 pieces of a puzzle, put them together, and then we get a better picture of what's going on at times.
And would you say sometimes it's not instant? It could be even a month after that, but the client would say,
yeah.
Oh, Patrick, guess what? I totally get what you saw.
Yeah. There's one quick story I want to share with you. I was working with this lady, and she was somewhat skeptical. And I saw a sombrero, and I saw a cobblestone road. And I'm like, that is really weird. Like, why am I seeing a sombrero? Why am I seeing a cobblestone road?
Yeah.
Long story short, a few weeks later, I got a phone call, long distance call. She was in San Diego, and she's screaming, oh my God, you'll never guess. I'm like, what? And she's like, I am in San Diego on a conference, and after the conference, we went for a walk, and as we were walking, I saw a cobblestone road. And she said, that's not the kicker. She said, we went to a restaurant, and we're sitting in the restaurant, and we saw this giant sombrero in the restaurant. So she said, you saw the cobblestone road, you saw the giant sombrero, bang, I'm sold. So people get different forms of validation, but everybody gets some form of validation if they're ready for it. If people are ready to be awakened and ready to be open, they will get the validation that they need. But if they're not ready at that time, they're not going to get anything. They're not going to get anything physical, I should say.
Right.
The energy will still do its work, the energy will still get in there, but if they're not ready for that awakening, they're not going to experience anything that they can quantify per se.
Excellent. And we were going to ask about skeptical clients.
Oh,
so
yeah.
they're probably your best ones.
Oh,
What
yeah.
is that like working with a skeptical client?
What I love about working with the skeptical clients is the mic drop moment. And what happens a lot when you work with skeptical clients, they are the ones who sometimes need the biggest validation.
Mm-hmm.
And when they do get that big validation, like, wow, like, how did you see that? Or how did you know that? You know, wow, they kind of almost fall down at times because their scientific mind is like, oh, how could you have known that? There was one gentleman that I worked with where I described the contents of his room, and another lady that I worked with where I described what she was cooking what her husband was cooking at the time, and the fact that he had burnt it. And when people get this validation, sometimes they get scared, sometimes they get confused, and other times they just shut down because they're not ready, because they've been programmed. We've all been programmed since birth to understand how our universe works from a scientific perspective, but when we throw another wrinkle on top of that, scares people, takes them out of their comfort zone.
Right. And you were probably one of those people.
Oh, yeah.
We have private conversation about how spirit showed you
Yes.
that your third eye was basically open.
Yeah.
It involved seeing a cat.
Yes. Long story short, I was sitting in a chair meditating, and somebody told me a long time ago, if you want proof, ask spirit for proof. And if spirit is true, if spirit is real, then you will get that proof. So I sat in my chair and I started meditating, and I asked for a sign, nothing. So I got up, thinking, I must be crazy. This is my proof. I'm crazy. Nothing happened. So I went walking downstairs to make a tea, and I saw a cat walking in my house. It was a glowing cat. It kind of looked at me, ignored me, and then kept on walking, and it kind of startled me, to say the least. We don't have a cat, by the way, but it was a glowing, three-dimensional cat, and I actually wrote about it in my book because it was very troubling.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't expecting it.
Right. Because Patrick was and still is a very linear thinking type of personality, very scientific.
That's right. I was a type of person that was very, let's say, hostile towards spirituality and religion, and because I felt that people who believed in this stuff were cowards. I felt that they were just afraid to die, and they were afraid to face the reality of, when they die, there's nothing else. So I would, hold my nose up at people, think, oh, there's that cowardly guy who believes in God, or that cowardly girl that believes in God, and but I was brought kicking and screaming into the reality that science doesn't have all the answers.
Yeah.
Our science is always playing catch up to the real world.
Yeah.
And eventually science will catch up, but it's not there yet. And what I've experienced has taught me and shown me that we are bigger than science. This universe is bigger than science.
Yeah. And that segues into my next question about working with a medical doctor. And you had mentioned to me that you work along with the medical doctor at times. He may send you
right
patients for you, clients. And how does that work?
So the doctor that I'm working with, there's two doctors. There's one doctor, he hasn't really sent me clients yet, but he's, because not everybody's open to it.
Right.
I'll start with him first. I won't mention his name because he hasn't given me authority to use his name.
Yep.
I was at his office for an eye exam. Every 2 years, government says go get your eyes looked at.
Yeah.
So I went in for my eye exam, and he asked me what I was doing, and I'm like, okay, should I really tell him or not? Because I said, okay, fine, I'll tell you. I told him I do energy work. He's like, oh, really? Like, how do you do? How's that? So I said to him, give me your hand. So I took his hand. Do you mind if I take your hand? Doesn't matter. This one here. And I went like this, and I sent energy up into his body, and he kind of jumped. He's like, what happened to my shoulder? He says, my shoulder's warm. And I said to him, did you have any issues with your shoulder? He said, yes, I did. I used to play rugby and I blew my shoulder out. And he said, when you put your hand over my hand, I felt energy moving up my arm and hit my shoulder and warmed it up. And he was like, how did that work? What happened? And, as I was, had the thing on my eyes, I'm trying to explain to him. And we had this huge discussion about, life versus existence. Right now we are living, but our existence encompasses multiple lives.
Yeah.
So that's the difference between existence and life. Life is ego-based, existence is spiritual-based.
Right.
So, we can live many, many times, but we only have really one existence up here, but we have different lives within that existence. So he was quite taken aback, as he was professionally schooled as a doctor. And my other doctor that he actually refers patients to me, he's been my doctor for many years.
Mm-hmm.
And he's done a lot of medical reports on me, and he's looked at my physical body. I won't bore you with the details, but there's a lot of anomalies about my physical body. And he said, I'm a freak of nature from a physical perspective. And I talked to him about the work I do, and he's sent people to me, and they've reported back to him about some of the results. And he's also been in contact with 3 of my existing patients or clients, and they share their experiences with him. And he's a part of the a process to document the energy work that I've been doing with people. So he always says, Pat, make sure you take notes. You document what their illnesses are. You document what you did on what particular day, and have them also document what they experienced. And I've been working with him now for about 4 years.
That's such an incredible. I love that. That's incredible. I mean, do you think that integrating Western medicine with a more metaphysical and or holistic healing is possible? Integrating both Western medicine and holistic healing.
I absolutely believe that. I work with a lot of cancer patients. Wow. And there's one particular lady that I was working with. She said to me, Pat, I'm going for chemo. I feel better, and I feel good since you've been working with me. But my parents, my family, they're telling me what the doctor's saying. The doctor says take chemo, take chemo. And I'm like, why are you asking my permission? You don't need to ask my permission. Yeah. You are accountable for your health. You need to take whatever steps you feel in order to get to your wellness. And she took the chemo, and I still work with her, and I help, Reiki and energy healing work, it's been documented to help deal with the side effects of cancer treatment, such as chemo. Yeah. So, I worked hand in hand with people who are on chemo, hand in hand with people who are on various forms of medication, and I'm comfortable with it, and everybody should be comfortable with working with Western medicine, because it's not a throwaway. No. We've spent thousands of years developing some techniques, and some of them work and some of them don't work. But again, everybody's accountable to figure out what works for them.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. So we're going to talk about our first healing session, which was a remote healing session done with Patrick Powell. So basically what happened last night, it was Patrick called and he explained how he was going to do the remote healing. Sorry. Excuse me. Patrick, how do we do this?
So typically what I do with people is I tell them to, as discussed earlier, find some place quiet where you're free of distraction and just be present, but don't try to guide. Mm-hmm. And I connected with you remotely, and we saw some things, or I saw some things, and I sent energy over.
So basically we put a timer on, and Patrick asked me to, so we hung up our phones, and we put a timer on, and so we both meditated for 15 minutes. So I at my place, and Patrick's at his place, and we both spent 15 minutes meditating, and my phone obviously went off, the timer went off, and Patrick called me right away, and basically I went first, and I think I told you what I saw.
Mm-hmm.
or what I think I saw, but I kind of edited some things. So I actually really, now today, I remember what I saw. So some of the things I experienced during the meditation was that I did see a John Lennon type figure in my mind. And, but then I saw many males coming into my mind. A friend of mine, a former boyfriend of mine, my brother, my father. There was a lot going on. Typically the mind seems to do that when you're meditating. And then it went quiet. So my brain did go really quiet. And because I am a meditator, I do it daily. But my hand got really hot. So I basically I was exhausted from work yesterday. So I actually laid down and did the meditation with my hands actually on my sacral chakra area. So this is what happened. I'm laying down, taking deep breaths, and I felt my left hand become very warm and very itchy too. So my palm was very itchy and I kept scratching it. So when our timers went off and Patrick called me, and basically some of the things I did tell him was that my hand was very itchy. I couldn't stop scratching it actually while I'm talking to him on the phone. It was very activated. I felt like there was something going on with my left hand, but even in my arm there was heat and itchiness. And why I decided to place it on my sacral chakra, maybe that's probably why I saw what I saw. And so Patrick, what did you see?
Okay. What I saw people moving around,
Yeah.
but there were more silhouettes. I didn't really see faces, but there was a native woman I saw. She was very pronounced. She was walking around very protective. She had her native clothes on, and she had bows and arrow.
Yeah.
And she was definitely there as a protector. I also saw a lot of red dots. All the time I was getting stuffed with red dots. And there was a particular spot during the vision where I saw it looked almost like grapes. They were round and had red spots on them. And I couldn't figure out what they were, because it's kind of like, as I said before, you're seeing something very briefly and then somebody tells you, okay, what is that? I'm like, it's like playing a charades game kind of thing, trying to figure out what you see or what you saw. So there's only after I spoke to you afterwards that we kind of deduced what it was.
Right. And I think I'm right now currently, especially last night, was actually more raised. I do have a rash, but I actually suffer from chronic rashes, and they actually look like little red dots everywhere, and sometimes they do cluster up. So yeah, that's probably what you saw, is these little red dots. And
I just want to interject from behind the camera.
Of course.
It's funny how you said cluster, because that's how grapes grow.
yeah.
In a
But that's
cluster.
actually how they look.
Yeah.
If you looked at it, it looks like a cluster, and they're like little red bubbles. And
Yeah. That's exactly how I saw them. Like I said, I used the word, I think the term I used was grapes. I said they kind of
Brown.
remind me of grapes, but they weren't grapes.
yeah.
And
So-
they clustered like grapes.
Yeah.
One more thing, is that something through energy healing that can clear out?
Yes. It depends, I've said, it all depends on their plan, their purpose, and if they're ready for it. If for argument's sake, it was the rash was a part of her plan to be cured by me or another healer or by a doctor or a cream in December the 23rd, 2017, then it'll happen. But if the experiences of that rash were meant to linger longer until something else happens, like say for argument's sake, you're going to meet the person of your dreams, he's going to be somebody who looks at rashes, then it's a part of your plan to not lose that rash yet, because you're waiting for that person who is going to be the person of your dreams, and he's going to come in and he's going to put some cream or do whatever and fix it.
I hope that's true.
So it all, like I said, it all depends on your plan.
Yeah.
Well, I shouldn't say your plan, the plan, because all of our plans are a part of a larger, all-encompassing, intertwined, interconnected plan.
Yeah. And so that was our experience with remote healing last night. So there was a lot activated. And then this morning, my hand is no longer hot. It's no longer itchy, but I did have a better sleep. A much sounder sleep. I wasn't moving around, tossing and turning, waking up every hour. It was quite, actually I slept in today and my daughter was late for school. So it was quite a long and deep sleep. And well, I must say a well-needed sleep, because it's been a week that I haven't been sleeping at all. And thank you, if that was you.
You're welcome, if that was me.
Thank you very much, Patrick.
You're welcome. So right about now, I'm going to demonstrate how I work in person with someone. And what I usually tell people is just relax, be present, clear your mind, and then most importantly, have no expectations. The reason why I don't want anyone to have any expectations is because sometimes visions will come, and if you start to drive them, then you won't be able to tell, is this from my expectation or this something coming in from the outside trying to communicate with me. So that's why I tell everybody, be a sponge, be like a leaf on a stream, and let the vision take you where it will, and don't try to direct it. So I always say before I start, do you mind if I touch you? When I touch people, it'll be either on their shoulder or on their head. You okay with that?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so I'm going to get started, but I always tell people that you need to clear your air. Make sure you try to get all that old stagnant air that never moves, because you have to imagine that our entire lung capacity, we only move about 46% of the air in our lungs. The other 60 to 40% doesn't really move much. So what I like to do is I like to cleanse the lungs by digging deep and then expelling all that old air that never moves and replacing it. And that's how I start fresh whenever I begin a healing. So I'm going to start that with 3 deep breaths, and you can as well, and all of you watching going to remember this as well.
And well, I thought it was very relaxing. I did see some things, but sometimes I can't put into words what I see.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess, I suppose I'll let you know maybe today or tomorrow.
And what happens
or a week.
What happens at times is it's kind of like, from a spiritual perspective, when I'm working with somebody energetically, it's kind of like going into a dark room, and there's stuff all over the room, and then somebody turns the light on quick and turns it back off.
Yeah.
And then I ask you, what was in the left corner top shelf? And you have to, pick your brain to say, okay, what did I see? And a lot of that is because we weren't meant in ego to spend a lot of time with that, in that place of energy.
Right.
Because we're meant to be here, and the longer we stay in that place of energy, it affects our vibration.
Right.
And obviously we don't want the highest vibration here, because we wouldn't be here. So we have to get glimpses of through energy, but we're not meant to reside in that energy for too long.
Well, we're in a 3D world, and we have to be present.
That's right.
To exist and to do what we have to do as human beings.
That's right. That's right. We came here to be human. We didn't come here to be gods.
Right. That's later. That's for later. Well, thank you very much, Patrick, for demonstrating healing and sharing with us today your work, and we're very happy that you've come by to Soul Tribe channel. Please subscribe to Soul Tribe channel, and we're going to talk about your website as well. So that would be the
Circle of Truths.
Circle of Truths.
Yes, I chose the word truths because, in plural, because we all have our truth. And it's kind of like, I always give this example every time I describe why I chose the Circle of Truth as a name. When I was a young boy, I thought girls were yucky. When I was like 7 or 8 years old, girls were the origin of cooties. All cooties came from girls. And as I got older, became a teenage boy, well, I'm like, well, it's not true. It's not true anymore. Girls aren't yucky. But at the time when I was 7 years old, that was true.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't like I was lying when I was 7. Girls were yucky to me. And as I got older, my truth changed.
Right.
Just because my truth changed doesn't mean my original truth was wrong. So we all have truths, and that's why I tell people you have to respect everybody's truth, because
Right.
everybody's truth is true for them at that point in their journey.
Right.
When I was younger, I thought, there was no such thing as God, there's no life after death, and that was my truth.
Right.
And my truth evolved. So that's why you need to have patience with people who aren't awakened or open yet, because none of us are born in this society open right away. It's a process that we have to go through.
Yeah.
So we just need to have patience with everyone going
Right.
through that process.
And keep searching.
Mm-hmm.
Keep searching. Thank you for stopping by.
Thank you for having me.